Every morning you look in the mirror, you see the person trading hours for dollars. The question is, how long will you keep selling your life wholesale and buying it back retail? You must stop trading time for peanuts and start trading it for ownership, for leverage, for wealth. Time is the only currency you never get back. Trade it for wages and it disappears. Trade it for assets and it multiplies. The wealthy don't have more time than you, they just use it differently. The question is, will your time become wages or wealth? Time is your most precious asset. I can't stress this enough. You can lose money, and with some effort and discipline, you can earn it back. You can make a bad investment, recover, and eventually rebuild. But when you lose time, it's gone. You never get yesterday back. You never get last year back. And here's the tragedy. Most people trade the best hours of their life, the best years of their life, for a paycheck that only lasts long enough to cover the bills. They don't realize that's the poorest exchange of all. Think about it. Time is life. It's the stuff life is made of. Every hour you give away, you're handing over a piece of your life. Now, there's nothing wrong with working hard. I believe in it. I spent many years of my life working and working hard. But here's the mistake. I was trading all my time for wages, and wages can only take you so far. Wages will feed you. Wages will clothe you. Wages will keep a roof over your head. But wages will not make you free. Wages will never buy back your time. The wealthy understand this distinction. They know that money can return, but time never does. That's why they don't measure wealth by the size of a paycheck. They measure it by freedom. They measure it by the ability to decide how they want to use their days. You see, real wealth is not the car you drive or the clothes you wear. Real wealth is waking up in the morning and choosing what to do with your time because your assets are working harder than you are. Now, what does that mean in practice? It means you've got to make the shift from spending all your time on tasks that pay once to building assets that pay repeatedly. If you work for an hour and get paid for that hour, the payment stops when the work stops. But if you take an hour and put it into building an asset, that hour keeps paying you over and over. That's the difference between a job and an investment, between wages and wealth. I'll give you an example. Early in my career, I worked for hours and hours knocking on doors, selling products. If I made a sale, I got paid. If I didn't, I went home empty-handed. That's wages. But then I discovered the power of building something once and letting it pay me over and over again. I began to invest my hours differently. I started teaching, recording ideas, writing them down, sharing them in ways that could be sold again and again. Suddenly, my time was multiplying. I had created an asset, something that worked for me long after I had stopped working for it. The strategy is simple. Take a portion of your time and use it to create assets. Assets can be many things. Investments that pay dividends, properties that produce rent, businesses that operate whether you show up or not, intellectual property like a book or a course. It doesn't matter what form it takes. What matters is that it pays you repeatedly. And here's the practical step I want you to take. Dedicate just 1 hour a day to building or learning something that creates passive income. Just 1 hour. You might say, but I'm busy. I know. That's why this is so powerful. If you're busy, then you know how valuable your time really is. So carve out that 1 hour, not for television, not for scrolling, not for idle chatter, but for learning, studying, creating, building. Do it daily, and you'll look up one day and realize you've created something extraordinary. Because here's the truth. If you don't put your time into assets, someone else will gladly rent your time for peanuts. And when they're done, you'll be left with nothing but the memory of years gone by. But if you invest your time wisely, if you turn hours into assets, Then one day you'll experience the greatest wealth of all, the freedom to live life on your own terms. So guard your time like treasure and spend it building things that will outlast you. Wages make a living, but assets build a fortune. And I want you to let that sink in. A job is good, it pays the bills, it keeps food on the table, it gives you stability. But here's the trap. Too many people confuse making a living with building a fortune. They think because they're working long hours and collecting a paycheck, they're on the road to wealth. But a paycheck, no matter how big, is still limited. And when your effort stops, the paycheck stops too. A fortune, on the other hand, comes from assets, things that continue working for you even when you're not working for them. I learned this lesson the hard way. For years, I was working tirelessly, believing that if I just gave more loyalty, more hours, more effort to the company I worked for, eventually it would all add up to wealth. But do you know what it added up to? Tired evenings, missed opportunities, and the realization that I was always starting back at zero each morning. The job paid my living, but it didn't build my freedom. It didn't build my future. That's when it hit me. If I wanted a fortune, I couldn't just work harder. I had to work smarter. I had to take the income from my wages and start planting seeds in the soil of assets. Think of it this way. Wages are like eating the fruit. Assets are like planting the tree. You can enjoy the fruit today, but if you never plant trees, one day you'll look around and find yourself hungry with nothing left to eat. A job lets you taste the fruit, but only assets will grow the orchard. That orchard, once planted and nurtured, produces season after season. It doesn't just feed you once, it feeds you for years, even decades. So what's the strategy? It's not to abandon your job, but to use your job wisely. Treat it as the seed money, not the harvest. When the paycheck comes in, don't spend it all on the immediate desires of life. Don't let it all flow into expenses, bills, and pleasures. Decide that a portion of it will be reserved for building assets. That's the difference between someone who makes a living and someone who builds a fortune. The wealthy don't spend first and invest what's left. They invest first and spend what's left. That one shift makes all the difference. You can still enjoy life, but you must give priority to building the foundation of wealth. Here's the practical step I want you to take. Set aside 20% of every paycheck strictly for asset creation. That means when you get paid, before you buy that new gadget, before you upgrade your lifestyle, you take that 20% and move it into a place that grows. Maybe it's stocks that pay dividends. Maybe it's real estate that produces rent. Maybe it's a small side business that can grow into something greater. It doesn't matter which path you choose. What matters is that you commit to making asset building non-negotiable. Let me tell you, the discipline of doing this consistently will transform your future. At first, it will feel small. You'll think, what difference does it make if I put away a couple $100s? But that's how orchards start, with one seed, then another, and then another. Over time, it grows into a grove. And suddenly, the shade is there, the fruit is there, and the abundance is there. The danger is in waiting for someday. Someday when the paycheck is bigger, someday when the expenses are fewer, someday when you finally have room to save. Let me tell you, someday is a trap. The only day you have is today, and if you don't begin today, the habit will never take root. Start small if you must, but start now, because wages will make you a living, and there's nothing wrong with that. But assets will give you a fortune. And once you've built that fortune, you'll discover the real wealth it brings. The freedom to live life on your own terms. Ownership beats overtime. I want you to think about that for a moment. Most people believe that if they just work harder, stay later, and put in extra hours, they'll finally break through financially. But let me tell you something very important. Overtime might increase your paycheck for the week, but it also increases your fatigue. It drains your energy, your creativity, your health, and often your family life. And here's the truth. Fatigue never creates freedom. Ownership does. See, working more hours only gives you more wages. But ownership multiplies your effort even while you sleep. That's the great distinction. The poor and middle class often think in terms of time. If I give more time, I'll get more money. But the wealthy think in terms of ownership. What can I acquire that works for me whether I'm awake or asleep, whether I'm at the office or at the beach? That shift in thinking is the dividing line between those who merely get by and those who build fortunes. When I was younger, I fell into the same trap. My instinct was to work harder, stay longer, and say yes to every extra shift. I thought that was the way forward. But one day, I looked around and realized that while I was earning a bit more, I wasn't actually getting ahead. My health was slipping, my relationships were strained, and I was no closer to wealth. Then I met men who owned assets, men whose investments worked for them, whose money grew without them having to grind all day. That's when it clicked. If I wanted freedom, I needed to stop depending solely on hours and start acquiring ownership. Ownership takes many forms. It could be real estate that produces rental income. It could be shares of a company that pays dividends. It could be intellectual property, something you create once, like a book, a course, or a product that continues to sell over and over again. Each form of ownership has one thing in common. It continues to deliver value without demanding your constant presence. That's the difference between working for money and letting money work for you. Now, does this mean you abandon your job and stop putting in effort? Of course not. Your job is valuable. It provides the seed capital. But the strategy is not to spend all your energy adding overtime hours. The smarter move is to redirect that same energy into building ownership opportunities. Because the truth is, if you can give 10 hours of overtime to your employer, you can give 2 hours a day to researching investments, learning a new skill, or creating something of your own. One path drains you, the other builds you. Here's the practical step. Instead of taking that next extra shift, use that time to research and invest in one small ownership opportunity this month. It might be as simple as buying your first dividend-paying stock. It might be exploring a piece of real estate. It might even be developing a small digital product or service that has the potential to sell while you sleep. The key is to begin. Don't underestimate small beginnings. The first stock you buy might only pay a few dollars in dividends, but it's not the amount that matters, it's the principle. That dividend represents freedom. It represents money working for you instead of you working for money. Over time, with consistency and reinvestment, those small beginnings multiply into something substantial. Ownership isn't about instant riches. It's about planting trees that will provide shade long after you've stopped sweating in the sun. And the sooner you start planting, the sooner you can rest beneath the shade. So the choice is yours. Spend your best energy trading hours for overtime, or invest that energy into building ownership that multiplies beyond your presence. One path gives you fatigue. The other gives you freedom. And freedom, my friends, is worth far more than any paycheck. Cash flow matters more than paychecks. Let that settle for a moment. Most people think wealth is about the size of their paycheck. They brag about promotions, overtime checks, or bonuses. But here's the truth. Paychecks feed you, but cash flow frees you. A paycheck stops the moment your labor stops. Cash flow, on the other hand, continues. Whether you're sick, on vacation, or even asleep. And that's where true wealth begins. Not in what you earn from your labor, but in what you set in motion that pays you without your labor. When I was younger, I thought just like everyone else. I thought, if only I could earn more per hour, if only I could climb the ladder a little faster, then I'll be wealthy. But here's the trap. The ladder only goes as high as the building. And no matter how high you climb, if you're dependent only on wages, the building still belongs to someone else. You're simply a renter of time. What opened my eyes was seeing ordinary people with modest jobs who lived with freedom because they had cash flow, streams of income flowing in from assets. That's when I realized wealth isn't about how much you make at the job, it's about how much flows in after the job. Cash flow comes from assets, real estate that rents every month, businesses that operate whether you're there or not, investments that pay dividends, royalties from something you've created. The beauty of cash flow is that it keeps showing up. While the paycheck is tied to effort, cash flow is tied to ownership. And once you understand that, your financial thinking changes forever. Think about it like this. If your monthly expenses are $3,000 and your paycheck covers that, you survive. But if you build enough assets to generate $3,000 a month in cash flow, you're free. That's financial independence. You could choose to work, choose to travel, choose to spend time with your family. Freedom is when choices come back to you, and choices come from cash flow. Now here's the strategy. Don't just chase assets that look good on paper. Some people buy assets that sit idle, appreciating slowly, but they can't eat the equity. What you need is consistent, ongoing cash flow. That means investments that pay you regularly, rental properties with monthly rent, dividend-paying stocks, small businesses that generate monthly revenue. Equity is nice. Appreciation is wonderful. But freedom is fueled by cash flow. I remember buying my first investment that actually produced a little cash flow. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover a dinner out, but I remember the feeling. I thought that dinner wasn't paid for by my sweat. It was paid for by my asset. And that small win changed the way I looked at everything. Because if an asset could pay for dinner, then one day a group of assets could pay for the house, the bills, the travels, the future. The practical step is simple but powerful. Make it your goal this year to create just $100 a month in passive income. That's it. Start small. It might be from a dividend stock portfolio, a simple online business, or even a small rental unit. It doesn't matter how you start, it matters that you start. That $100 will feel very different from any $100 you earn at work because it represents freedom. It represents ownership. It represents the possibility of living life on your terms. Once you get the taste of cash flow, you'll never see money the same way again. Because money earned with sweat has limits, but money earned through ownership has none. So remember, the size of your paycheck is not the measure of your wealth. The true measure is how much flows in when you're not working. And until you make that shift, you'll always be chasing survival instead of building freedom. Assets work when you sleep. That's when you know you're on the right path. When your money starts putting in hours that you don't. Think about it. For most people, the day ends when they shut their eyes. Their income clock stops the moment they stop moving. But for the wealthy, the night is just as productive as the day. Their assets are out there working, earning interest, collecting rent, producing sales, whether they're awake or not. True freedom begins the day your money works harder than you do. I remember when someone first told me, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until the day you die. At first, I brushed it off. I thought, well, that's fine. I'm a hard worker. I'll just keep grinding. But here's what I learned. Hard work is honorable, but it has limits. There are only so many hours you can give, only so much energy you can spend. If your income is tied only to your labor, your life will always be tied to limits. But assets remove those limits because assets don't need sleep. They don't take weekends. They don't call in sick. They're tireless employees that never stop working. Now, how do you build that kind of freedom? The strategy is simple but powerful. Take the returns your assets generate and reinvest them into more assets. Most people spend the fruits of their assets as soon as they appear. They collect a dividend check and treat themselves. They make a profit from a small side business and buy something shiny. But the wealthy know better. They feed their money back into the system. They turn every small harvest into seeds for a bigger harvest. That's how a small tree becomes an orchard. For example, let's say you own some dividend-paying stocks. At the end of the quarter, you could spend those dividends on a night out, or you could set up automatic reinvestment. That way, those dividends buy more shares, and those shares earn more dividends, and the cycle compounds over time. The difference looks small at first, but give it years, and you'll have built an asset machine that grows without your permission. Or think about a small business. Instead of pocketing every bit of profit, reinvest a portion into better systems, better marketing, or expansion. Suddenly, that little side hustle is growing into a steady stream that no paycheck could match. I'll never forget when I first saw this principle play out in my own life. I had a small investment that returned a modest profit, and instead of treating myself, I put it right back into buying more of the same. At the time, it felt like I was delaying gratification, but years later, I saw that tiny act of discipline multiplied into something far bigger than I could have imagined. That's when it clicked. Freedom isn't bought with one big win, but with consistent reinvestment of small wins. The practical step here is one anyone can do. Automate your reinvestments. Don't trust your willpower to make the decision every time. Because let's face it, if the money lands in your hand, temptation will start whispering. But if you set up your brokerage account to automatically reinvest dividends, if you instruct your bank to push interest earnings into another asset account, if you commit to putting back a percentage of your business profits before you ever touch them, suddenly, wealth begins to build itself. Systems remove excuses, and automation builds discipline without you even thinking about it. Imagine the power of waking up each morning knowing that while you slept, your assets were busy. They were buying more shares, earning more interest, paying down debt, or expanding into new opportunities. Imagine the peace of mind that comes from knowing your wealth doesn't rest when you do. That's the shift that separates the ones who just survive from the ones who thrive. So don't just work for money, make money work for you. Don't just spend your profits, reinvest them. Build an army of assets that works the night shift, the weekend shift, the holiday shift, while you enjoy the life you've built. Because the day your money works harder than you do is the day freedom begins. Think multiplication, not addition. That's one of the greatest secrets of wealth. The poor try to add more hours, but the wealthy multiply results. And here's the truth. You can only add so many hours before you collapse. You can work early mornings, late nights, and weekends, but there comes a point when your body gives out, your family suffers, and your spirit grows tired. That's because addition is limited. But multiplication, now, multiplication is where wealth begins to take on a life of its own. See, most people think the answer to financial struggle is overtime. Work harder, put in more shifts, trade more hours. And yes, it might solve a short-term need. But let me ask you, how long can you keep that pace? 10 years? 20? No, because sooner or later you run out of time, and when you run out of time, you run out of money. That's the trap of addition. Multiplication, on the other hand, doesn't require you to be present every moment. It requires leverage, and leverage is what separates the struggling from the successful. So how do you multiply? You use systems, technology, and people. Let me give you an example. In the old days, if you wanted to sell a book, you had to print copies, sit at a stall, and sell them one by one. That's addition. Today, you can write a book once, put it online, and sell it over and over again while you sleep. That's multiplication. Or think about business. One person can only serve so many customers in a day. But build a system, train a team, or create an online store, and suddenly you're reaching hundreds, even thousands, without being physically present. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I thought I had to outwork everyone to win. I was burning the candle at both ends, adding more hours, adding more stress. But then I realized I was only scaling my exhaustion, not my wealth. So I shifted my focus. Instead of asking, how can I add more? I started asking, how can I multiply? That one shift changed everything. I began to look for opportunities where my effort, invested once, could keep paying me back many times over. The strategy here is simple. Stop trying to outwork everyone and start building things that work without you. Use technology to automate repetitive tasks. Build systems so your income isn't tied to your presence. Empower people who can carry the load with you and for you. That's how you turn one seed into a field, one sale into thousands, 1 hour into a lifetime of returns. Now, here's a practical step you can take. Start one small project this month that earns even when you're not there. It could be a digital product, like an online course or an ebook. It could be an automated sales funnel that keeps bringing in customers while you focus on other things. It could be licensing a skill you've developed so that others pay you for the right to use it. Don't underestimate the small beginning. Even if that project makes $50 a month, it's $50 that didn't require your presence. And once you've built one, you can build another, and then another, until the multiplication effect is undeniable. Imagine the power of waking up each day to find your work from yesterday is still paying you today. Imagine the freedom of knowing that you're no longer stuck in the cycle of more hours, more exhaustion. That's the path to real wealth. Not addition, but multiplication. So remember, if you want to live a life of freedom and abundance, stop adding and start multiplying. Discipline turns peanuts into gold. That may sound simple, maybe even too simple, but don't overlook it. Because wealth doesn't begin with fortune, it begins with discipline. Most people think the problem is income. They say, if only I made more money, my life would change. But I'll tell you what I've learned. It isn't about how much you earn, it's about how disciplined you are with what you already have. I've seen people earning $30,000 a year who quietly became millionaires because they learned the art of discipline. And I've seen others making 10 times that amount with nothing to show for it but debt and worry. The difference is not in the paycheck, it's in the choices. Every dollar that comes into your life is a little soldier. Now you can send those soldiers out to buy toys, trinkets, and temporary pleasures, or you can send them to work, to build wealth, to recruit more soldiers for your future. The wealthy understand this. They treat money with respect. The undisciplined, however, treat it like a lottery ticket. They spend it as fast as it arrives, chasing comfort today while sacrificing freedom tomorrow. When I was young, I learned this lesson the hard way. I used to spend everything I made, new clothes, nights out, gadgets. If I earned it, I spent it. And I was broke. Not because I didn't have income, but because I didn't have discipline. Then a mentor said to me, "Don't let your lifestyle consume your seed." That struck me. I realized that if I kept eating my seed, I would never plant a harvest. So I made a decision. No matter how small, I would put something aside. At first it was just 10%, then 15%. And that habit, that simple discipline, changed everything. See, the strategy here is straightforward but life-changing. Pay yourself first. Before the rent, before the bills, before the shopping spree, set something aside for your future. The problem is, most people do the opposite. They pay everyone else first, then hope something is left for them. But the wealthy flip it. They say, I'll take my share first and let discipline handle the rest. And you know what happens? Life adjusts. When you set aside 10%, automatically, you still survive. You learn to live on the rest. But here's the magic. While you're living, your money is working. So here's the practical step. Automate your discipline. Don't rely on willpower. It's too fragile. Set up an automatic transfer of at least 10% of your income into an investment account before you even touch it. Make it untouchable, like it never existed. When you do this, you eliminate the temptation to spend it. And over time, those small amounts, the peanuts, start to compound. With discipline, peanuts don't stay peanuts. They turn into gold. Imagine 10 years from now, looking back and realizing that what began as $100 a month quietly grew into tens of thousands, simply because you stayed consistent. Discipline is the bridge between what you have and what you want. Without it, even a fortune will slip through your fingers. With it, even a modest income can build a kingdom. So remember, it's not the size of your paycheck that determines your wealth. It's the size of your discipline. Skills compound faster than money. You may not realize it right away, but this is one of the most powerful truths in wealth building. See, money can be earned, spent, lost, even stolen. But skills are permanent assets. They can't be taken from you. They don't depreciate with age. In fact, they multiply over time. A single skill can turn a life around. A single skill can open doors, create opportunities, and even build empires. And the good news? Skills are available to anyone willing to pay the price of time and discipline. Most people spend all their focus on money. They say, I need a raise, I need a bonus, I need more income. But let me ask you, what happens if the company closes its doors? What happens if the economy shifts? What happens if your position gets eliminated? If all you've got is a paycheck, you're at risk. But if you've built skills, communication, leadership, investing, sales, marketing, writing, coding, problem solving, you can take those anywhere. Skills create resilience. Skills create leverage. Money may come and go, but skills make sure it comes back stronger every time. When I was young, I worked for a man who made me rich with lessons before he made me rich with money. He used to say, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. At first, I didn't understand. I thought working harder at the job would solve everything. But then I realized your job can make you a living, but your personal development, your skills, your mindset, that can make you a fortune. The difference is vast. So I started dedicating time to learn. I studied how to speak, how to sell, how to invest, how to think, and those skills multiplied faster than the paychecks ever could. The strategy is simple. Invest in skills that expand your earning capacity and your ability to build assets. For example, learn how to manage money, and suddenly every dollar you earn works harder. Learn how to sell, and you'll never worry about income again because opportunities will always find you. Learn how to lead, and people will follow you into ventures that multiply wealth for everyone. Learn how to invest, and your money begins to create more money. Every new skill is like a new tool in the toolbox of wealth. And the more tools you have, the more problems you can solve, and the world pays generously for problem solvers. Here's the practical step. Dedicate at least 30 minutes a day to learning a high-value skill. Don't say, I don't have the time. Reclaim it. Cut out 1 hour of television, one endless scroll through your phone, and you'll find it. Read a book. Take an online course. Practice a trade. Study a market, or refine your communication. 30 minutes a day doesn't seem like much, but over a year, that's over 180 hours of focused improvement. Imagine where your career, your business, your wealth-building journey could be if you invested 180 hours a year in learning instead of just entertainment. Let me give you an example. Let's say you learn the skill of digital marketing. At first, you might only know how to run a simple campaign. But over time, as you keep learning, you could help a business double its revenue. You could start your own consultancy. You could create and sell your own product. That one skill could turn into 5 different income streams. That's the compounding effect. Remember this, money will never outperform the person who manages it. If you want more money, you've got to become more valuable. And becoming more valuable comes from skills. Every skill you gain compounds into opportunities, income, and assets. So don't just chase money, chase mastery. Because while money can disappear overnight, skills stay with you for life, multiplying your wealth far faster than dollars ever could. Don't rent your life. Own it. That's a principle that can change the direction of your financial story. Think about it. When you rent, you're simply trading money for temporary use. You don't build equity. You don't build value. You don't build wealth. Renting consumes wealth because the money leaves your hands and never returns. Ownership, on the other hand, creates wealth because it builds something that stays with you, something that can grow, something that can pay you back many times over. For years, I watched people rent not just houses, but lifestyles. They rented their furniture, they rented their cars, they even rented their future with credit cards. And they wondered why they felt stuck. The answer was simple. They never switched from renting to owning. When you own something, a property, a business, a piece of intellectual capital, it becomes a foundation. It gives you leverage. It can increase in value. It can generate income. And most importantly, it works for you even when you're not working. The strategy is to make ownership a priority. I'm not saying you have to buy a mansion or build $1 million company overnight. Start small. Buy a tool instead of renting it every month. Own 1 share of stock instead of spending that money on temporary pleasures. Write a book. Create a course. Build something once that can be sold 1,000 times. Ownership doesn't have to start big. It just has to start. So here's a practical step you can take. Look at one recurring rent-based cost in your life. Maybe it's equipment. Maybe it's software. Maybe it's even a small personal expense. Swap it for ownership, even on a small scale. Because the moment you stop renting everything, you start building something. Money doesn't follow hours. It follows value. That's a distinction that changes everything. Too many people think the way to earn more is simply to work more hours, but that's a trap. If working more hours were the secret, the hardest workers would be the wealthiest. And we know that isn't the case. You don't get paid for time, you get paid for the value you bring into that time. Think of it this way. An hour of sweeping the floor may pay $10, but an hour of leading a company could pay thousands. The difference isn't the clock, it's the value. The marketplace doesn't reward sweat, it rewards solutions. And the larger the problem you solve, the larger the paycheck attached to it. That's why people who constantly improve their skills, who take the time to learn how to solve bigger problems, see their income rise. The strategy is simple. Stop asking, how many hours can I work? And start asking, how much value can I create? The more you increase your value to the marketplace, the more money will naturally flow in your direction. That's why some people earn more in one day than others do in a month, because they've raised their value by solving bigger, more complex, and more urgent problems. So here's the practical step. Look around your workplace, your business, or your community, and identify one problem that needs a solution. Don't wait for someone else to fix it. Step in and create a solution this week. It doesn't have to be world-changing. It just has to be valuable. That's how you train yourself to think like a person of wealth, by focusing less on hours and more on impact. Wealth is quiet, not loud. That may surprise you, because today the world teaches the opposite. People think wealth is about flashy cars, brand new gadgets, or showing off the latest fashion. But often, the louder the display, the emptier the pockets behind it. True wealth rarely announces itself. It grows silently, consistently, and patiently. The philosophy is simple. Wealth doesn't need to scream because it speaks through freedom, security, and choices. A flashy lifestyle may impress neighbors, but it won't protect you in a crisis. Real wealth is in the assets you own, not the clothes you wear or the car you drive. And while many chase status, the wealthy quietly accumulate ownership. They let compounding, patience, and discipline do the talking. The strategy is to delay unnecessary consumption and direct that money into things that grow. You don't have to stop enjoying life, but you must know the difference between impressing others and building independence. Every time you delay a purchase you don't need and put those dollars into an asset, you're buying yourself more freedom down the road. The rich know this secret. Consumption follows ownership, never the other way around. So here's the practical step. This month, pick one lifestyle expense. Maybe that extra streaming subscription, dining out one less time, or skipping the upgrades you don't really need. Redirect that money straight into an asset building account. Watch what happens over time when small, quiet decisions accumulate. A few dollars each month may not feel like much, but multiplied across years, it can turn into financial freedom. Wealth doesn't need applause. It grows best in silence, while the world is busy showing off. Legacy is the final test of wealth. If your wealth dies with you, it was never true wealth. It was only temporary comfort. Real wealth is measured not just in how well you lived, but in how well others can live after you're gone because of what you built. That's the philosophy. Money that ends with you is consumed. Money that outlives you is multiplied. The strategy is simple but profound. Build assets, knowledge, and systems that can be passed on. You can pass down real estate, businesses, investments, but also principles and disciplines. Imagine leaving your children not just a house, but the wisdom to manage a house. Not just money in the bank, but the mindset to multiply money. That's when your wealth truly outlives you. I've seen too many people spend their whole lives loyal to a paycheck, but when they passed away, there was nothing left for their families except debt. Contrast that with those who built systems, assets, investments, and habits that continued to provide long after they were gone. Their children didn't just inherit money, they inherited a way of thinking. That is wealth in its truest sense. So here's the practical step. Begin today by writing down the wealth principles you want your family or community to live by. Teach them the importance of saving, the discipline of investing, the courage to take risks wisely, and the gratitude to give back. Document your systems, your values, your lessons, because money without guidance can be lost in a generation. But money paired with wisdom can last for generations. The question is not how much you can accumulate, but how much of what you build can outlive you. That is the real measure of wealth. Wealth is not built in a day, and it is not built by chance. It is built by design, discipline, and deliberate action. Too many people give away their best years, trading time for wages, hoping loyalty alone will secure their future. But the truth is, Jobs can disappear, markets can shift, and circumstances can change overnight. What remains is what you've built, the assets, the skills, and the principles that stand the test of time. So the question is not, will you work hard, because you already are. The real question is, will that hard work buy you freedom or just survival? Wealth is not about luck, it's about choices. Every paycheck you earn is an opportunity to either consume or invest, to either rent your life away or own your future. I challenge you, starting today, to commit to building assets, no matter how small, no matter how humble. Open that account, buy that first share, start that side venture, write down your vision, and then take a step toward it every single day. Because wealth is not just about money, it's about freedom, choices, and the legacy you leave behind. The time to begin is now.